So let's talk a little bit more about the tuning of the model. So I'm going to start off with that segmentation model that we talked about. So it's the same file that you've got in the Excel file. We've gone through the EDA portion of it before, so we know kind of what the shape of that data is. I'm going to drop out these percentage fields, and I'm just going to stick to just the standard fields of fixed out, mobile out, international out, and broadband for this particular exercise. So here again, we're going to use the inputs on the ones that we want to take a look at. And then I'm going to feed that into a k-means. Already gone through the auto cluster. The auto cluster tells me that, hey, you probably want to use like 4 to 5 clusters. Now, if I run this, I can see that I got good silhouette right here. The quality of it is good, but I can see right here, we're starting to get a few of these little small munched up clusters that are really, really tiny. And I'm also seeing that ratio is really kind of out of sync here. So this is kind of a concern for me. I mean, I can go down into it and I can see that mobile out calls is really not a big predictor to it. It's broadband, international out, and fixed out. So what I'm deciding to do now is let's look at this traffic just from one aspect. I want to look at it just from that fixed out portion on it. So if I go to that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a binning node here. And there's several ways that you can set up a binning node, but I'm going to set those 4 fields that we have coming into it. And the default here would be fixed width. I'm going to set it to mean standard deviation. And then I'm going to set the tolerance level of it to plus or minus 2 standard deviations from the mean. So that's going to kind of give me a series of bins. And it's going to be broken off by where the mean is and how many standard deviations from the mean that you're going to have. Now you can also go through some outlier detection and further tune this out a little bit more, but I want to show you kind of the back end of the model of how you can use something like this. So I'm throwing a binning node in it right here. I'm going to set the tolerance on it on 2 standard deviations. I'm then going to look at just the fixed out coming out of this. So I'm going to limit it down to just the fixed out. Now when I build my k-means, I've got good silhouette right here. I've got 4 clusters. I can see one cluster is larger than the other, but I have a pretty decent ratio too as well. So if I'm looking at these 4 clusters, again, just from that fixed calls aspect, I can see that this is producing a better model than what I'd had previously. Now, I want to then turn around and break these out into what each of these are. And so I'm just basically doing a select. The select off of it is cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3, cluster 4, and then I'm going to run it into a table node. Now in the table node, I've already gone through the exercise of highlighting the records, and so I want to see, here's the 4 fields which comprise that I'm interested in looking at, but let's find, after it goes through that bin, let's find those where we see that all of the categories, so this would be like low usage. If it's in a category of 0, it's in a category of -1, then that's going to mean that it's a low usage field. So if I run this and I do those highlights, I can see almost all of these records fall into that category. There's a few that don't, but almost all of them fall into that category of being in the 0. So for this one, again, we're looking at means of these calls. So for this one here, I would market all services to this one right here. Now, if I run cluster number 2 and take a look at cluster number 2, let's see what I'm highlighting. So I'm going to look at mobile out, international out, and broadband traffic out, all being low. So these are people that have heavy landline usage. And so for those, if I do that highlighting, you can see that there's a large majority of these records are highlighted. So these would be people that I would turn around and I would market that international and broadband usage to them. So I'd offer them a package deal to maybe get them engaged with that. Now this one right here is a balance. So I did start with putting that same effect here. So we can kind of see no records are highlighted when I do that. And then going through various variations of this. Hang on. Some reason it's trapping me. Okay, hold on. There we go. So like trying, hey, let's look at where this is greater than 1 or greater than or equal to 1. where this one is. And no matter which way you split this, you don't really get highlighted records. So this is really a balanced record. So this one right here, these are our loyal customers. These are the ones that are using all of our services to some degree, and those are the ones that we want to maybe think about an incentive or a promotion to those loyal customers to keep them on board. Now, the last one here, this last cluster is really kind of interesting because this one here, okay, we can run that same query here, and we can see that it's not really highlighting any records, so they do have some usage, although these ones here really aren't using the fixed out, for instance. It's falling into the lowest bin. Very little of the fixed out is being used here. So for these, this could be one of two things. This one here is, again, where maybe an incentive plan to increase usage, much as we looked at with cluster number 1. It could be something that you may want to increase usage, so you put an incentive plan out there to get them to use it more. Or you could also look at this as maybe these are valuable customers to you. So like with my phone plan with Verizon, I pay a flat $40 a month per line, and for that $40, if I use a small number of minutes or I use a large number of minutes, it's all going to be that same $40. So if I was doing this from Verizon's perspective, and I don't use, let's say I don't use the texting feature very much. I do, but let's just say I didn't. That would kind of show in this model here. So this may actually indicate where your valuable customers are. In other words, those that you're getting a flat monthly fee for X number of dollars for them per line, but in turn they're not turning around and they're not using those services. So that could also be viewed. You may want to incent them to increase usage, but if you have monthly plans set up, for instance, those would be your most valuable customers. And so in those cases, you'd want to try to retain those customers. And so if you were going to launch a campaign for retention of those customers, that would be the one that you would want to target. So this is kind of how you can take a model, walking it down through it. I've added an extra step here to do binning because I wanted to try to get these groupings to make the k-means model work a little bit easier for me. So by doing this, I can get to this excellent result on the back end of it. Now, if I was going to do the deployment stage, I would keep this node, the binning node, the type node, the golden nugget, and then these categories out here. I would keep that in my final model and then write that up into the analysis document. So again, for this week, that's the deployment phase of this, much like you did with the classification classification models. So that's really what the pieces which you would trim out. But as you're kind of tuning through this, I want you to think maybe this is another thing that you can do. Now, to this model, if I turn around on outlier detection, I can actually get better clusters out of it, and you would be able to see that. But just wanted to kind of focus on the pieces here that I'm changing up a little bit on the model from previously demonstrated, and just kind of see if there was any questions related to that. So, going to have a quick office hours tonight. This is Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern. We're going to be online for that. Welcome to join for that if you have questions. Or our usual time, Wednesday night, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern. We're also going to be on to kind of walk through any pieces of this that may not make sense and to talk about things that are happening in future weeks. Have a good week. Thank you.